What's up, everyone? I'm going to go over the handlebars where they attach here. Somebody's asking how you tighten them, and I'm also going to go over the steering stem itself, not the handlebar that goes down, the handlebar mount that goes down into the stem, but this lower part here. So let's talk about that first. It's basically held onto a, I don't want to call it an axle, but it's almost like an axle that comes up through here, which is coming from your bottom piece where your wheel's mounted. So it has like this, what looks to be like an axle, but again, it's the bar that goes to your wheel. Comes up through here and up to some point within this area. Now you can see this is a bracket, and this bracket is basically surrounding the stem here. So it goes over the stem, and then there's 3 screws that pass through it. They're pretty good sized screws, and there's no nuts or anything on the other side. This bracket is threaded, so the screws pass through there and then thread into here, and then this is really just a clamp at that point. These screws are really cranked down hard. They need to be, because this is this is literally attaching your stem to that axle that goes to the front wheel. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. The screws, they're Allen screws, so you need some Allen keys. Okay, so these screws are actually 6mm Allen, and a 6mm Allen is a pretty good size wrench, so you got room to torque on there, and you're going to need to do that. You're going to want to tighten these. If your stem should be loose, you would want to tighten these and tighten them not in a straight order where you just tighten this one as tight as possible, then this one. Do them so this one's a little bit tight, move to the next one, move to the next one, then go back and just do them a little bit more at a time until they're all tight, because you want this clamp to evenly clamp, not just go really tight on one place and then have the other ones try to catch up to it. So that's all it is. This is the clamp that holds this stem onto the axle that goes down to your wheel mount. So a reason why you might want to loosen that is to the same reason. If you loosen these screws, and then at that point, because this is clamped, it's been clamped down, that metal isn't just going to automatically spring back. So at that point, and I believe that's just aluminum, so it shouldn't be terribly hard. I've done it before, but then you have to take a large flathead screwdriver of some sort, and get it in between this crack that's in the bracket. That's where the bracket opens up there. And then you can pry this gap open a little bit to make it looser if you need to. If loosening the screws doesn't make it loose enough to move, then you could do that. Pry this open a little bit. And then at that point, you would do that in a case where, let's say your stem wasn't lined up properly or perfectly. Now you can see, looking down the front of mine, my lower stem part, if we just look at that, which has my headlights mounted to it, and then the horn is down on the wheel part, and then the wheel, and you can tell it looks pretty straight, so I wouldn't need to do that. But let's say if maybe yours is off to the side a little bit, so it doesn't look like it's lined up straight, this bottom piece. Now I'm not talking about just the handlebars, but this bottom stem. So if that's off to the side a little bit, you could do that. You could loosen those 3 screws. At that point, you would be able to move this right or left on that axle and align it with the tire, the wheel, have somebody hold it while you then retighten those screws. So you can adjust that. You could also, if you had to replace this whole piece, that's how you would remove it. You just loosen those screws, and then the whole piece would slide right off that axle. So for normal times, of course, you want to just tighten those 3 screws as tight as you possibly can. You don't want to break them, but that is really the tightness of that whole stem on that axle part, are those 3 screws that I showed you. I've even used something like this before to put on the end of my wrench to give me a little bit more torquing power. Again, you don't want to break anything, you don't want to overdo it, but you want those to be really tight as you possibly can get them. And that's, again, going to make your stem here tight against that axle. And then The other thing, you will get some movement. These scooters inherently have a little bit of movement front and back, and that's due to being a folding scooter. You know, if you didn't want to have a folding scooter, you could have all this so tight that you would get no movement whatsoever. But for example, on mine, if I put my foot on the deck, grab the handlebars here, and I don't know how well you can see that in the camera, but I can move it forward and backward a little bit. Well, mainly forward, and then it springs back. But there's a little bit of movement there, and that's due to the folding mechanism of the scooter. Okay, so again, there's going to be some inherent forward-backward movement. It shouldn't be a lot, but again, it's just part of having this folding system on this scooter. And there is a spring that really controls the tension. So that's when you feel a movement and it comes back, it's literally the spring pushing handlebars back. That's normal. You're going to get a little movement. Let's just take a quick look here at what we have. We have our kind of the pedal thing you step on when you lower or raise the handlebars, and that connects to, in the middle with the screw, to this. Basically, it's a bar that slides up and down in this slot here, depending on where your handlebars are. Right now it's down because I have it kind of folded. And then the pedal also goes back and attaches to this, basically this bolt that goes through, that has the spring on either side, and the middle piece there is the back part of that black pedal. So that's connecting to all three parts there, and then back here as well, kind of holding everything together. If you were to take this apart or had to replace something, you would start here. You would have to get I think it's a 6mm Allen wrench, and there's an identical, it's the same on the other side. So you have to get two of them so you can hold one and then unscrew the other one. And literally one of them is a screw that threads into the other one. So the other side, I think it's this side, it's actually kind of a long nut, so to speak, as the other screw goes into it and threads in. If you were to take that out, then you could remove this whole mechanism and replace it if you needed to. Other than that, just tighten it up as best as possible. But that's not going to change anything with the tightness of your steering. If you had a lot of play and it's from this mechanism here, in other words, it's the whole movement, not just like part of your handlebars or something, then I would have to say it's this spring or springs. I'm not sure if it's one or two. I'm guessing it's two now. That maybe they are a little weak or something, because the tension of these springs is what's controlling that tension on the forward-backward movement of the bars. So there's really nothing you can adjust to make it any tighter. Unlike the Q1 has a completely different mechanism, and underneath here there's a nut. It's actually right here. It's kind of hard to see now, I don't got light, but there's a nut up underneath here that you can get a little wrench on and tighten up. If you tighten that up all the way, that will limit the amount of play you have in that forward-backward motion on the handlebars. It also will probably make it harder to fold at that point. So, you know, it's a balance of if you want to fold it or not. The Q Power doesn't have an adjustment that's going to tighten or loosen that. It's just going to be that springs tension, like I said. So, and it's normal. I mean, it shouldn't be excessive coming from this point here. Okay, so let's take a look at the handlebars now. Okay, so on the handlebars, as you know, to fold them, you pull out on this piece that will slide out. You pull this out here and get it off the edge of the bar. So then once you pull it out past that end piece, then you can fold the handlebar down. So let's say you have it snapped up and in place like that. And like mine just does it a little bit, but maybe yours does it a little more. For example, on my right-hand handle here, I don't know how good you're going to be able to see this on the camera, but if I try to push it up and down, I have hardly any movement whatsoever. It's pretty tight on there. Now if I do the same thing on my left handlebar, I get a little bit of movement there. Now to me it's not a big deal, and it's part of the process of having something that can fold and not just a solid bar. So you may think, okay, how can I tighten this? I've looked, and basically this is how it is. There's no really way that you can tighten this. It's It's all a matter of the fitting of the parts. This part that slides in here versus this part, and the part that comes out on the end here. These are all machine parts, and there's going to be slight tolerances difference, between them. And it just, to me, it seems like that's how it is. You might make it one that's tighter than others, may get one that's looser than others. So there's really no adjustment you can make. You may think, okay, I can adjust these screws here. And by the way, this is another one of those deals where it looks like a screw head, it's an Allen again, but it's really more of a nut. It comes through most of the way, maybe all the way, I don't remember. And then the screw on this side is the screw that goes and threads into this piece. So the part that's the head that's facing the rider and the deck is the actual screw. So again, you'd have to get your Allen key on both of these, your Allen wrench, get two of them, one on each side. And you can try tightening this as much as you want, but it's not going to change any movement you have in here. And I'll show you why. Okay, this is an older handle stem I had to take off of a different scooter because it was damaged, it was bent, and I just wanted to keep this piece of it to use as like a, just something like to pry with on a wrench or something. Whatever, I just cut it off there. But anyway, this is still the original part of the handle stem, as you can see, that would go right there. Now this one's a little different than this one. There's a couple different styles. Basically the same thing though. Now you can see, once the handlebar gets threaded in there, and here's one of the old handlebars, there's these black washers that would go in those little, on either side there's a place for the washer to go in, and then that simply would go into the slot in there, and you'd slide it inside, and once the holes line up, you'd have to push it on. Once the holes lined up, you'd stick the bolt through, the nut and the bolt, and attach it that way. And again, now you can see, if you tighten those screws, all you're doing is tightening them against this aluminum bar. You're not putting any pressure whatsoever on the inner mechanism. So that's not going to keep it from moving. Go ahead and tighten those up, but don't overdo it, because you don't want to strip the heads on those, and you will. And you can tighten it as much as you want, and it's not going to matter, because you're just tightening it up against this bar, as you can see. That's not going to put any pressure on the inner part that moves, so that's not going to do nothing. Again, from what I can tell, what determines the tightness of that on there is just these machined parts. And you can see on this one, it's been filed down. This wasn't my scooter, somebody did this, and I've seen this in videos where somebody thinks it's too tight, it's too hard to pull this off to fold the handlebars, so they shave this down a little bit, which helps that problem, but you're also making it looser. That's the whole problem with that. So this piece here, fitting inside this cup piece that will slide over it, the tightness of that between the two is what's going to determine if you have any little bit of play in your handlebars or not. So again, unfortunately there's no way to adjust it to make it tighter. It is what it is based on the tolerances of these pieces when they're put together. And I've seen some, like on mine, I have one that's really tight, one that's got a little play. It doesn't bother me. I know it's not broken, it's not going to fall off or anything. That's impossible. So I don't even notice it when I ride. It does, it has a little bit of play in it. I'm moving it up and down right there. Not a lot, but it is more than this side. This side's pretty solid altogether. So, it is what it is, but if you have excessive play there, maybe somebody filed it down, if you bought a secondhand scooter, and maybe that's the problem, they filed it too far and it made it even looser. There is one thing I can do. There's an easy, quick thing you can do. Just thinking about it, if this piece right here, fitting into that cup, like I said, has a little bit of looseness to it or gap, then I thought, well, let me try putting some tape, just a little bit of tape around the end of this, and I could always keep adding tape and try it each time. And if that's really what's holding it, which my theory was, then that should tighten it up. Okay, so I tried that, and it does indeed work. Let me just show you with mine here how I did it, just so you can try it. Shouldn't take long. I also need some tape. First, whatever handle you're going to be working on. I'm going to do my left one because it's a little bit looser than that. Again, I wouldn't have even done this except for, to show you in this video. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this back and then fold the handlebar down. Okay, so I've got my handlebar folded all the way down now, and put it all the way down so you have access to this piece here without this handlebar being in the way. Okay, so you notice this one I have on my scooter is slightly different, just looks different. So this is two different styles. It really doesn't matter. It would be the same for either one of these. There's no adjustment to tighten them. This would be the only way you could do it. See, you can see on mine, I haven't filed mine down, so it's just the tolerance of the part as it was, machined at the factory. Everything can't be exactly the same, so you're going to have tolerances here and there, and as long as they fall in that tolerance, then it's considered a good part. So yeah, this is basically all you can do. Next step is find yourself some tape. In my case, I'm using this blue painter's tape. If yours is really loose, or you think it's really loose, then you could try duct tape, but I tried this earlier on mine. Duct tape on mine is too thick. It's too much. So I had to back off to something thinner, and this painter's tape I had works perfectly. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a strip of painter's tape. I don't want it to be any deeper than that, so I just want to put some tape basically along that edge. You can cover it over the top. You can just run one piece like all the way over, and that's what I'm going to do. Don't cover the bottom because that's where the handlebar has to fold back up into there. So you got to leave the bottom part open and just start out with one single piece that goes over the top of both those pieces. Okay, so really all I did is I lined up my flat edge against the bottom on one side. Again, you want to leave this part open. So I lined it up on this edge, just ran it over the top, and now I'm just going to cut it with a scissors or X-Acto knife is what I like to use, but just cut it right along that edge to get the roll off. So I cut the roll off, and it doesn't have to be exact. So now if I just kind of push that around that edge there, and then next I'm going to use my X-Acto knife. Again, you could use the scissors to cut this excess tape off so it's flush with the edge of that piece there. Okay, so I cut that excess tape off, and it's just kind of hanging around the edge. Again, you don't need to be too accurate or anything. And then just go ahead and fold any loose edges you have, just kind of fold them inward. Something like that. Okay, so basically what we've done is I've added a small layer of tape around this whole piece to the outside there. And again, leave the bottom open. Okay, so now I could try it and see how it works. And what I'm going to do is just grab my handlebar. I want to put the camera down when I do that because I got the tape on there, I don't want just the process of flipping this up to take the tape off. So I'm going to hold this piece down like this until I flip it up straight, and then I can let go of this. I did that, and now you can see this cup, I guess I'd call it for lack of a better term, isn't automatically springing back in. There's a spring-loaded gizmo in there of some sort, so it should be pushing it back on automatically, as you know, like with the other side. But because we got that tape on there, it's taking up a little more room, so now it's a little tighter. So basically what I want to do now is use my hand to push this over to where it should be. Before you do that, make sure this tape is nice and flat, push down as much as possible. And then what I found helps is if you twist this maybe back and forth as you push it on, and try to get it on there. So you can tell already it's tighter just because that cup cannot get over there. So again, we just want to push this over onto here. It helps if you twist it when you're doing it. Okay, so it wasn't too hard. I got it over there, pushed it over there, and now when I pull on this, I can tell it's pretty sturdy right now, just by putting that tape on. If you did that and you still had some extra play in it, then, and especially like if you flip that up and that cup pops back on its own, that's telling me you're going to need to make it tighter. If you want it to be tight like this so it doesn't move at all or very little, then you basically have to take up some of that room on this mechanism here, because that's what's determining it. The tolerance is between that piece and the piece that it slides into, or that slides into it, that cup that goes over the top of it. And again, they machine these parts, and there's some are going to be tighter than others, and that's just kind of how it is. If you do this, keep in mind this isn't a permanent solution, and if you ever fold your handlebar down, you may have to replace that piece of tape every time you fold your handlebar down. So it might be a case where you don't want to fold that handlebar anymore if you got it on both of them. You can still fold, the stem down, but not fold these in. Or you could, and I mean, it took me like 2 minutes to put that piece of tape on, so it's not a big deal. Maybe carry some tape with you, and yeah, there you go. So again, if that wasn't enough, you need to tighten it up, pull that back off, do the same process, put 2 layers of tape on it. Or at that point, see, I used 1 layer of this painter's tape. Instead of putting another layer on, I'd probably go to a single layer of the duct tape, the gray stuff, because that's a little bit thicker than this stuff, so that might work perfectly. But again, before I tried the duct tape on mine, and it was too much. I could not get this thing back over all the way, and it ended up like just pushing the tape over. So I knew it was too much at that point, and knew that this blue tape would work better. I think that's about it on this. Anybody got any questions? Drop me a note down in the comments, and I'll try to answer you. All right? Take care, guys.